Welcome back to the Oxendine Law Podcast. I'm your host, Jarrod Oxendine. Also have my co-host, Christine Palmer. And today we're going to do something fun. I know you guys are going to love this episode because we're going to tell you about some fun success stories, right? Everybody likes to tell their war stories and their battle stories. And some of the ones we actually have are quite entertaining, but they're actually quite good as far as the results we were able to get for our clients. And so we're going to give you those tips and pointers, give you those fun stories so that you can maybe apply it in your own situation. So, Christine, the first one that comes to mind for me, and I think this will resonate with some of the listeners, is we have frequently situations where people have a business. So they have a marital business, and they both claim that they're working in the business, and husband claims, I'm really the face of the business. Wife claims, I'm really the face of the business, and they fight over who's going to keep the business. And whoever keeps the business obviously has to buy the other party out.
Right.
So this success story is quite funny in that we actually represented the husband in this particular case. And husband really was the face of the business. So he was the primary point of contact with all the customers. He was the one out in the field. Like when people thought about this business, they thought about husband, not wife. But wife insisted that really I'm in the office. I'm running the finances. I'm doing the books. You know, this place can't run without me. So, damn it, I'm going to keep the business and I'm going to buy you out, husband.
Yep.
So after a lot of negotiating back and forth, we came up with a beautiful plan, right, Christine?
Yep.
You remember this case.
Of course, yes.
And we actually allowed her to buy him out.
Yeah, we called her bluff. You think you run this business without much help from him? Go prove it.
That's it. And so the great thing that happened for this client is, long story short, she got the business, but she had to buy him out. So she gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars for his share of the business. And then husband just goes off, starts his own business. And then guess what happened? All the customers, all the vendors, they weren't used to wife. She didn't know the ins and outs of the business. She just run the books. So they all left the previous company and went to his new company. So not only did he really essentially get the business because all the customers and vendors went with him on his new business, he also got a windfall because wife had to buy him out for his interest in the business, and she was left there with nothing. So she paid all this money and was stuck with a business that was basically worth nothing, and he essentially got to take the business.
Right. And remember, she had like 2 or 3 people come work for her, and they were all quitting within 4 to 6 months because that's all she ever did was keep the books. She doesn't know how to generate the business. So they come in thinking there's business to be done. They're not getting any commissions, so they're out.
Love that story.
Yeah.
It was a great job by us.
It was like, you want it? Take it.
Now, here's the mistake, obviously. I mean, I'd be remiss if I don't point this out. Wife should have had a non-compete, right? I mean, anytime you're going to buy your spouse out from a business, you want to get that spouse to commit to a non-compete agreement so that they can't just go out and start a competitor business and take all your customers. But you know what? That was her bad.
Sure. And the recent laws, those non-competes are very, very difficult to uphold now. They were pretty hard back in the day, but there's the law that came out in 2024. I mean, they're almost null and void except under very, very, very specific circumstances. So even so, we probably could have gone out of it.
Well, and that's true. And it's got to be, very limited as far as duration of time that it can stay in effect and like the geographic location. So yeah, I agree. There's a lot of specifics that have to be in there.
They can no longer be
but in this
complete
case,
bar.
her and her attorney missed the boat. They didn't even try to get one.
They didn't.
Of course, it was in the back of our mind, but we jumped all over this when they weren't asking for a non-compete. And we knew he really was the face of the business. She was giving him hundreds of thousands of dollars. He just starts a business down the street and takes all the business with her.
We're like, you can have the website.
What a result.
You can even have the phone number. There you go.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so I start with that. Christine, I think you've got a great story about custody.
Yeah, so some of my favorite clients of all time are the single dads. That just really hits home to me because I think there's such a stigma out there about what we call baby daddy syndrome. Like if you weren't married when that kid came along, you're somehow less of a parent, less of a father. I think the world in general is kind of getting past that. But like a lot of these older traditions, it's just not gone yet. So that whole baby daddy syndrome sometimes sets in. And it's still there when it comes to things like law enforcement and sometimes in certain courtrooms. So I did have a father who, when he came to see me, was in a really, really tough spot. Not only had there been an incident that I believe my client, it was completely fabricated. Of course, there's 2 sides to every story, but there was an incident which resulted in his arrest and removal from the home. mom took advantage and went and got a TPO, so a protective order. She went to the judge on her own and said, this is all the stuff that happened. It was terrible, and it happened in front of our children. So a protective order was granted. He's not allowed to go back to his home. That's a home he owns. He actually only owns it. They're not married, and she's not on the house at all. So he's kicked out of his own home. She's allowed to stay there with their 2 children. There was an arrest at the incident and, like I said, the protective order. So now he's got conditions of bond that say he can't be around his baby mama or his children. He's got the protective order that names the children as well. So we had a huge uphill battle. So first things first, for a protective order, you have to have a hearing within 30 days. So we tackled that first. I was able to successfully defend that. They sort of had an offer on the table where they were going to consider doing a consent without a finding of family violence, but I knew that could possibly damage his criminal case. So we took it to trial, and I was able to very successfully defend and eliminate that claim, which helped him hugely in his criminal case because the burden is actually higher in the TPO case than it was the criminal case. So it's like, if you can't even prove that, you're definitely not going to be able to prove this. So we were able to get the TPO dismissed and out of the way. His criminal charges stay pending. So now I've got the custody battle in front of me. The best thing I know to do is to create and manufacture evidence. Clearly, there's a he said, she said, and the evidence is a little bit in her side because we've got the police report. He was arrested. So the inference is something bad happened. So I requested to have a guardian ad litem appointed. A guardian ad litem is just an attorney for the children. So that guardian was able to come in, speak to mom, speak to dad, speak to the witnesses, speak to the daycare workers who only know dad, speak to the soccer coach who only knows dad, and find out the real picture by sort of immersing himself into the children's lives, found out the true picture. It took us a little over a year of total litigation, but after about 14 months after meeting him, he had custody of his children, back in his house, criminal charges completely dismissed. Mom gets every other weekend parenting time because of the bad acts she did during the case, and she has to pay him child support.
Yeah,
So one of my favorite success stories.
And I remember that case, and the moral of the story is mom lied. She made up all these accusations that dad was being abusive to the child to try and gain an unfair advantage in the divorce case to get custody.
Right.
And unfortunately, we've seen that happen many times where somebody will, here's an example, dad's abusing the child physically, even sexually. We've had the allegations where, dad is sexually abusing the children.
I think he's touching the kid.
Yeah. And so they go out and get a TPO. They go out to the judge and try and get an emergency order. And most judges are going to err on the side of caution. I mean, when you have those type of allegations, right, you're not just going to say, I don't believe that, and put the child with dad, right? So dad's having to jump through the hoops and disprove all this stuff. And at the end of the day, what's great about your result in that case is that mom got punished.
That's it.
And I had cases also, same fact pattern, where mom's made up all this stuff. Dad has to jump through all the hoops. Not only did dad get custody, mom ended up with supervised parenting time and limited parenting time.
Sure.
Because if she's going to make up that kind of stuff that's so serious regarding her own children, then perhaps she doesn't need to have unsupervised parenting time with that child.
That person's going to have a terrible influence. Like if that's the example you're setting for your kids is making up and lying and completely fabricating. Yeah, the hurdle with those cases, though, is when it's a he said, she said, even if dad sounds more believable, there's not a lot in the middle. So doing things like appointing a guardian or having a counselor, some other neutral party to be involved that can kind of be a tiebreaker. Because, of course, I'm advocating for dad. Mom's attorney's advocating for mom. So a judge is just hearing these two totally opposite stories. So getting that middleman and winning him or her over is really where you can pivot those cases.
I hate when people game the system, but guess what? At the end of the day, Oxendine Law is going to hold you accountable. We're going to jump through those hoops, or we're going to disprove the allegations. And if you're lying, watch out. Your payday's coming too.
That's it.
All right, next success story. Everybody loves to talk about adultery, right? So we got to throw in some adultery cases. They're salacious. Everybody wants to hear what everybody else is doing out there. So let's spill the beans on a couple of those stories. I got 2, and I'm going to try and run them, in reverse as quick as I can. First one is where dad's the cheater. So I had a case. Divorce case, obviously, husband and wife, dad's controlling all the finances, husband, I think there were kids in that case, I don't quite remember. So husband, dad, same person. He's got a girlfriend and he controls the finances. Mom's in the dark. She doesn't have access to the bank accounts or the credit cards, so she doesn't know how dad's spending his money. So the husband in that case is putting the girlfriend up in fancy hotels. He's paying for her apartment. He's taking her on trips. He's showering her with lavish gifts. And one day, he goes over to the apartment and wife gets a phone call from a couple of her girlfriends. And I don't remember why they were there. I don't know if one lived there or maybe they were just visiting.
One of her
somebody.
good friends lived in that same complex.
Okay, so there you go. So they see husband going into this apartment where they know this lady lives, and they call up the wife who they're friends with, like, your husband's over here. Did you know he was over here? What's he up to? We thought it was strange that he was going in so-and-so's apartment.
Yeah,
and she's
girl code. You got to reach out.
Yeah. And wife's like, what?
He's at work.
He's at work. That's not what he told me he was doing.
Uh-huh.
So long story short, the wife kind of takes note of that, right? And then she waits till they go over next time for the next visit, but it's all coordinated. Her and her friends are basically on the stakeout. Sure enough, he shows up. He goes into the apartment. I remember seeing the video where the girlfriend opens the door and she actually steps out of the door. They have this long embrace and this big kiss. And of course, they go in the apartment and the door closes. So that's what she got. She got him pulling into the apartment complex, going to the lady's door, knocking on it. Actually, I think he had a key.
Yeah.
Did he have a key?
Yeah.
I think it came out that he had a key. So anyway, they have this embrace. All right, so she comes and hires us. And here's where the success story comes in. We want to make sure we potentially can get some additional evidence, right? It's great that her and her friends did a stakeout, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to have your friends and your client on the stand testifying about their stakeout.
Those
we want to have a... Yes. Actually, it kind of would have been fun. But we want a professional, right? So we hire a private investigator, and the investigator over a period of several months goes out and gets a lot more surveillance footage. We got them going to the movies together. We got them going to dinner together.
He's at the airport.
That's right. Going on a business trip, and he's opening the car door for her, so it's obvious that they're in a romantic relationship. We haven't filed the case yet. So we get all the evidence, and then we send a demand letter to the husband, letting him know what we've got. Give him copies of it.
Oh, yeah. Flash drive, everything. Here it is, plugged in.
Gotcha, baby. And she did a great job in that case. That's hard for somebody when they know their spouse is cheating to keep it quiet and not confront them about it. But so, kudos to her for doing that.
Yeah.
So we send out the demand letter. It's very one-sided in her favor. She gets the majority of the assets. She gets an outlandish amount of alimony for a long period of time. And so husband had a decision to make. And he chose the easy way out.
He did.
He said, instead of going through this nasty contested divorce process where I'm going to have to give my deposition and they're going to take my girlfriend's deposition, which clearly he loved, right? Because he did this. So he took this one for the team, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't for the husband and wife team. It was for husband and girlfriend team.
Yeah, for sure.
But he decided to agree. So she walked away with much more than she probably would have gotten in a trial or what a judge would have given her.
Not only, more than she would have gotten, but preserved how many marital assets and resources and attorney's fees, depositions, third-party discovery. I mean,
time.
We would have done it all. Yeah.
I mean, we got that case done in less than 30 days.
That's it, to just be done.
Great success story. Now, very quickly, the converse of this, I had a client where I represented the husband. You remember this case. I'm not going to use the name, but you probably know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And he made a lot of money. He was successful. He was making, I don't know, $500,000 plus maybe per year. Right. Wife had not worked in like 20 years. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she wasn't making any income. She made the mistake of having an affair, and just like the wife client in the previous case, we did a little recon, and he was able to keep his mouth shut, and he didn't say a word to her about knowing she was having the affair. We got the private investigator. See, these clients were smart.
Yeah.
They came to us first. That's kind of one of the points here. Come to your lawyer first, get the advice, get the game plan in place before you pull the trigger. And that worked out beautiful in both these cases. We get the private investigator. Long story short, we got all the surveillance and footage of her, staying at this guy's house and, pulling in the garage. She thought she was slick. Remember, this is the case where she would pull into his garage. Like he would leave the garage empty and she would pull in real quick and then close the door behind her.
Right.
So anyway, long story short, she got zero alimony. That's the point of this story. That's the success story because under normal circumstances, our client in that case would have to pay some alimony. It was a long-term marriage. She had no earning capacity. And bless her heart, this is one I kind of felt a little bad for her. Like we did our job maybe too good.
Right.
Because this poor lady, I mean, she got nothing
Yeah.
She got zero alimony. She literally, after being a stay-at-home mom for like 20 plus years, had to go out and get the best job she could. I don't think she was making much. I mean,
He's not going to displace his children.
No, that's
so
true.
That was his little olive branch, was the equity in the house, and
he paid some child support.
and he was going to continue to pay.
But that wasn't paying all of her bills. And she had to go out and get a job, and she had to scrape. So that's the success story, is he got to get out of that. Because keep in mind, folks, if you can prove that the reason for divorce is due to adultery, it's a barred alimony, which means it doesn't matter how much money the other spouse makes. If you are guilty of adultery and you can prove that's the reason for the divorce, which you have to prove,
Right.
then it don't matter how much your spouse makes. It don't matter how destitute you are. You are barred. You are not allowed to get any alimony as a matter of law. So
Right.
great success story.
And when Jarrod says you have to prove it, remember legal proof. How many people do we have that come with some circumstantial evidence and think, I've proven it. Look how many times he texts this girl.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, technically they work together. There's an explanation there. So proof means legal proof, not a really strong suspicion.
Well,
She had new lingerie. I've never seen her wear that.
Not always in the act, right? But we got to have some type of direct evidence that shows that they're having a relationship with somebody.
Sure. Yeah. And it truly means relationship. That financial spending does also solidify their relationship as well.
I don't want folks to think that you actually have to have videos of them having sex.
No money shot is
We
required.
We don't have to have the sex shot, okay? It's all the other stuff, and then most judges can put the puzzle together from there. All right, Christine, we got time for one more?
Yes, I do want to speak about one more. It's a client that I am so proud of. I wish I could use names because I'm that proud of her. Much like myself, she took the career path. That's not always easy for a female, to say, I'm going to go be the breadwinner. Like, I'm going to be the one. That sort of more traditional head of the household role, she took it on, and she was doing it amazingly. She was exceeding in her company. She had worked her way all the way up to being in top management, and she kind of took that survey that some of us take, myself included, and says, hey, everything's going really, really well, but that doesn't mean everything's perfect. And what she decided was, the only thing that really wasn't going well in her life was that marriage. That was not fulfilling for her. And being so fulfilled with her career, she ignored it for just long enough, till she got to the point where she's like, hey, the kids they're young. They're going to be malleable. They're going to be able to recover if I pull the trigger now. But she didn't want to delay happiness any longer. So she decided to let her husband know that she intended to divorce him. Granted, he felt like he was the more primary parent because he physically was home more often. I think what he underestimated is how much she did as the superwoman mom. She still did the grocery runs, and she still did the schedule the doctor's appointments and get them to and from. Yeah, he might have watched them more in the middle of the day. But as far as the real logistics, he wasn't there. So she told him that she was willing to do up to 50-50 when it came to custody and parenting time because he's a great dad and the kids love him. Of course, he's fun dad. So we actually sent an uncontested settlement offer over where he was going to get the kids for half of the time. She was actually still going to pay him child support, and things would be amicable. No, this was one of those men that realized he can't do it without a woman in his life. And if the wife ain't going to be there, he's going home to mama. So he told
his bluff.
Yeah. He told her he was moving to Louisiana, back home to mom. And then he started the whole, well, you can't keep the kids here. You're never home. There's no way that you can keep the kids. I'm taking them to Louisiana. So Loescher was terrified.
Case. So literally, this guy gets offered a 50-50 even though he's never been involved. And has enough balls to think that he's just going to pick up and move to a different state and take the children with him, and that she's just going to be okay with that.
Well, no, so he was involved, right? He's home with them during the day.
Okay.
That's the thing. And he thinks that's everything. He thinks that's parenting 101.
So
he doesn't realize.
Foregone conclusion that since she was out working, I can move wherever I want to go and take the kids wherever I want to take them.
And the best part, so because of the role he played, all of his social I wouldn't call them friends, his social network are the other moms, right? The classic stay-at-home moms. So he's hearing situations they've been in where working dad is out there, and if a divorce happens, mom gets primary, and he's like, well, it's not a gender thing. This is the role I play. He thinks he plays the role of mom because he's the one that's there most during the day. So he said, I'm going to Louisiana. I'm taking the kids. There's no way that a judge would give you custody when you're never home. And of course, he starts upplaying how often she's actually gone. Yeah, she traveled for work, but not weekly. It was like with those quarterly trips, and they were only a couple days. So she got really nervous, came together with a plan. So I told her, all you need to prove is that you can do it. and we can take that to a judge. So we employed a full-time nanny who was amazing, had great credentials, went ahead and got her sort of on board, got her familiar, and explained sort of the role she was going to play. We actually had the nanny testify in court as to how she was going to collaborate. My client had worked, we had her boss do an affidavit for the temporary, talking about how she was going to have flexibility in mornings and evenings, even though she works a big job. The success story of this part is just setting up the plan. So it's not telling a judge, I can do it. It's showing a judge, not only can I do it, this is exactly how I'm going to do it. This is the roadmap.
So dad's in Louisiana, mom's here. Look,
But he's wanting to go.
yeah, he's wanting to leave. Mom's committed to staying. All right. And she can stay in the same school district, whole 9 yards.
Absolutely.
And you set up the plan, and the result was?
Yeah. So in court, he's arguing, I'm not going to work in Louisiana in the beginning. I'll be living with my mom. I'll have built-in childcare. So he really believed it. And that was the best part. Like on the stand, you can tell he just thinks, I can't wait to have my kids back home with mom in Louisiana. And the judge sided with mom. So she actually awarded her primary physical custody. She told the dad, if you stay in Georgia, you can have up to 50% of the parenting time. And if you're going to move to Louisiana, the kids are staying here with their mom. She's got a plan in place. Everything's going to be the same. The kids are going to stay in the same school district. They're going to maintain. And
so did he stay and get the 50-50, or he left anyway?
Well, the big thing was the reason for the move, right? The judge focused on the fact that you're just moving for convenience. So when we got there, basically, she told him that and said, I'm going to give everybody about 15 minutes to speak if you think you want to try to work this out. So we get out in the hallway, and he kept holding on to, I'm going. And then he caved. He said, I'll just stay. I'll keep the 50-50. Yeah. So the best thing is that makes it look like he'd never even really planned to go, right? You made a life-changing decision to not move in 15 minutes in the hallway. But I think after about, a whole day of trial, he started to see where it was going to go. But when he was testifying, he believed he was going.
Well, it's a good story. I mean, his mistake obviously was trying to leave the state, right? I mean, judges will sometimes allow that, as you know, right? But you got to have a good reason.
It's almost necessary.
You can't just say, I've got help in a different state, and if I'm not going to have my wife around, I need my mama's help, so I'm going to move to Louisiana, take the kids with me. It don't work that way. Now, some judges will allow it if it's out of absolute necessity, but that's where he screwed up. And by the time that came out as his true reasoning, right now he's already lost credibility with the court. So
Absolutely.
Any chance he had of trying to get primary custody were gone. The best he was doing at that point was a 50-50. At least he smartened up in time enough to take that 50-50. All right, I think, Christine, that's a wrap. Everybody, we appreciate you hanging with us at the Oxendine Law Podcast today. We hope you enjoyed the success stories. We have a lot of success stories. We got a lot. It would take probably 10 episodes to cover them all, but we try to cherry pick some of our favorites. So we hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for checking us out. Be sure to check us out if you want to continue watching the episodes on your favorite social media platform. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe. We will see you next time. Remember, at Oxendine Law, we play to win.